All right, it says I'm live. I didn't realize that there's like this moment where it says waiting for an encoding server to claim placeholder video. I don't know. I need to check now that I've said that out loud and see if, because my wife tells me I burped at the beginning of one of these videos, which is not very Christ-like. I wonder if Jesus Christ ever just let out a big burp, or if he was always respectful. I don't know how they saw burps back then. I don't know. But, you know, if you're making videos, and it's not like I'm monetized, it's not like I'm doing this to make money or to be famous or special. Just doing this because I've put enough garbage out on the internet that maybe I should make up for it by putting something positive. And there's no one more positive than Jesus Christ, in my personal opinion. I don't know. I'm sorry if you watch one of these readings and you hear a burp at the beginning. Hope you'll accept my apology. I'm late. I've been trying to do this at 10, but I had something I had to do that was important, and yeah, forgive me for that as well. If you're one of my, I think I get maybe 2 viewers at a time watching. But I did warn you. I warned you Friday that I might either not make it or be late, and I am in fact late. So, Chapter 8 of The Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis. I don't think I read this. I actually wrote down that I would do Chapter 8. Oh, no, I did. So we're going to go on to Chapter 9. Because succoreth. What was in there? No, wait. Did I go on? Golly gosh, darn it. What chapter am I on now? Oh, I did through to 11. I'm very prepared today. I'm very prepared. I read on because I went through those chapters so fast. Yeah, it's because I'm so diligent. So let's move on to chapter 12. I do believe that I ended at chapter 12, or at the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12, of the inward growth of patience and of the struggle against evil desires. O Lord God, I see that patience is very necessary unto me, for many things in this life fall out contrary. For howsoever I may have contrived for my peace, my life cannot go on without strife and trouble. Thou speakest truly, my son, for I will not that thou seek such a peace as without trials, and knoweth no adversities, but rather that thou shouldest judge thyself to have found peace, when thou art tried with manifold tribulations, and proved by many adversities. Did I already read this one too? You know what? I'm going to read it again because I like this. I like all of book 3. Book 3 has been very good. If thou shalt say that thou art not able to bear much, how then wilt thou sustain the fire hereafter? Of 2 evils we should always choose the less. Therefore, that thou mayest escape eternal torments hereafter, strive on God's behalf to endure present evils bravely. Thinkest thou that the children of this world suffer not, but little? Thou wilt not find it so, even though thou find out the most prosperous. But thou wilt say, they have many delights, and they follow their own wills, and thus they bear lightly their tribulations. Be it so. Grant that they have what they list, but how long, thinkest thou, will it last? Behold, like the smoke, who Behold, like the smoke, those who are rich in this world will pass away, and no record shall remain of their past joy. Yea, even while they yet live, they rest not without bitterness and weariness and fear. For from the very same thing wherein they find delight, thence they oftentimes have the punishment of sorrow. Justly it befalleth them, that because out of measure they seek out and pursue pleasures, they enjoy them not without confusion and bitterness. Oh, how short, how false, how inordinate and wicked are all these pleasures. Yet because of their sottishness and blindness, men do not understand. But like brute beasts, for the sake of a little pleasure of this corruptible life, they incur death of the soul. Thou therefore, my son, go not after thy lusts, but refrain thyself from thine appetites. Delight thou in the Lord, and he shall give thee thy heart's desire. For if thou wilt truly find delight, and be abundantly comforted of me, behold, in the contempt of all worldly things, and in the avoidance of all worthless pleasures, shall be thy blessing, and fullness of consolation shall be given thee. And the more thou withdrawest thyself from all solace of creatures, the more sweet and powerful consolations thou shalt find. But at the first thou shalt not attain to them, without some sorrow and hard striving. Long accustomed habit will oppose, but it shall be overcome by better habit. And that's true. And I wouldn't be reading this book. The reason I'm reading this book is because I replaced bad habits with good habits. And I would like to make going live at 10 every day a good habit. And I'll start a book like this quietly, but I won't finish it. I get distracted, or I find another book, something that I think is more pressing, more interesting at the moment. And so I've got a bunch of books that I've gotten, the first 5 to 10 chapters through, and then I give up. I get bored. I don't even get bored. I just get distracted. It's like ADHD. But getting myself into a habit where now reading this live has gotten me to read this far, which is good. I feel like I'm sharing my understanding that this book is inherently good, and I reading it out loud for people to hear, that's good, right? And so I consider this to be a good habit, and I'd like to stick to it. I was late today, but that's what it's all about, is habits. And we all have bad habits. But getting on the right track, you start working this muscle in your brain that especially if you have what they call an addictive personality, you can get addicted to the good thing. And that's, I think a lot of times you'll see people that get away from alcoholism, get away from porn addiction. They get away from these things that are very addictive. It's a dopamine thing, right? And then they turn to God. Oftentimes, maybe to the degree that they make people uncomfortable. They want to talk about God all the time. And I have nothing against people that do that. But I don't plan on me going live every day talking about these books or whatever I do from here. It's not going to always be about God, but I thought this would be a good starting place. I'll quit talking. I'll keep reading. It's all about habit, though, and you realize that when you replace long accustomed bad habits, as Kempis is pointing out, with good habits. We are animals, and you're going to have habits. You're going to have habits. So you might as well choose which ones that you not necessarily get addicted to, but which ones you choose to take part in. I mean, that's I think what the nuns wear is a habit. It's and that's what's so cool. That's what's so cool about Christianity. And Christianity takes the human condition into account for everything. Christ took the human condition into account for absolutely everything. And so you read Plato's Republic, and he goes on about, there's the real world, and then there is this ideal that we can't really ever achieve. Plato had some wild things to say. He had some ideas about the perfect city, right? And how it would be run, and how much money the lawmakers would make, and if you wanted them to actually be good and do what was best for the collective. And he made the point that there's these layers to it, but the ultimate layer is just completely unachievable. And a lot of his ideas, a lot of things he threw out there were ideas like getting rid of the family unit, very socialist, very, very communist. But the ideas of the best mating with the best, and you dictating these things, and that's not how humans work. Just like communism, just like socialism, some of these ideas go against human nature, and I think that Plato knew that. He understood that when he was writing about Socrates. I think he had a good handle on human nature to a large degree. But a few hundred years later, Christ comes along, and Christ gets us. Oh, that's that. There's a big push right now with Jesus. God gets us. He understands us. And I'm always wary. I get real wary of ad campaigns, like Christian ad campaigns, when you don't know where the money's coming from or what the end result of the push is going to be. And maybe that's, it's on baseball stadiums. It's like it's on the ads behind the batters. He gets us, capital H, talking about Jesus. And I'm always worried that there's going to be apologists for sin. It's my big worry. And I think this is a very Catholic thing, but you get worried of I'm just human. I can do this. I can repeat these sins because I will be forgiven. It'd be like if somebody, a Catholic, say, was like, well, I'm gonna keep doing this sin because all I got to do is go to confession and the sin's wiped away. I'm good, and then I can go do it again and then get the sin wiped away. And it just doesn't. It doesn't work that way, right? We use reason, we use logic. It doesn't work that way. But Christ does get us, and they're not wrong with this ad campaign. Now, where they're taking it, what the end result's going to be, I don't know. But just like anybody that clicks on my videos, you gotta be wary of anybody that's going to put Jesus. Jesus is it's easy to use Jesus to make money, to gain favor. It's real easy. And I know there's a lot of people that know me, people that know how ornery I am and that I used to be, would probably see this and say, oh, look at Dave. He's trying to make people think that he's a good Christian. I'm not. I am. I am. What? uh, I hope that's. I hope that's not truly how it comes across. I really do. After just putting so much negative stuff. Well, either way, I'm getting like 2 viewers. So it's. Keep reading. Just be quiet. Keep reading. It's all I have to do, and I can't. I just have to. I have to bloviate. I have to just say things. But yeah, that's that's what Christ did, right? As he said, look, habits. Um, there's things that are part of your nature. Christ understood that we are both animals and not animals at the same time. And that's supposedly why God loves us above all the creatures he ever created, was the fact that we're not given, angels, they know who God is. They know who he is. They go talk to him. They can go into the same room as him, I think. Or I don't know. Heaven, they know where heaven is. They can go to heaven, right? And see it. Like they know the game. When they were created, they knew the game. We're created and we don't know what's going on. We know that we like water and we like food, and then when we grow up, we like, copulation, and we've got these innate animalistic drives. That's what we know. And the rest of it, we've you have to have faith. You have to have faith that the rest of it even exists. Otherwise, it's just this. And we are just animals. And Christ understood that animal part. And again, that's why this book is so cool, because he's making the point, look, this is a slog. Life is a slog. It is trial after trial after trial. And you're not going to win every time. But that's why Christ died for us. That is literally why Christ died for us, was to remove our sins. And now Christians debate, well, what does that mean? Is it if you're saved, are you done? Are you good forever and ever? If you're baptized and you say, I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, oh, you're good. You're done. I don't know. Us Catholics, we believe in purgatory. So if you don't go to hell, you go to semi-hell. And there you have to have your sins burned off. And in hell, you just burn. There's no burning anything off. You cut off from God, and that's that. But we believe purgatory, you burn off the sins until you can finally go up to heaven. Supposedly my grandma, one of my grandmothers, used to opine that she thought this was purgatory. And if you look at it from different standpoints, I can sort of see that. I can sort of see that argument, but we do know this is a test. And we know it's a test because if you can pass the test, if you can, or at least show up and try your best, then you can have nice things. Civilization is able to grow when it's built upon the sacrifices of those that inhabit it. You go to Europe and the cathedrals that are built, it took generations to build them. So the people that started it, they knew they weren't going to see the end. They knew they weren't going to see the end result. But with that kind of Christian faith, that faith in an afterlife, it's the same thing with the Revolutionary War. We wouldn't have this country if there weren't men that knew. A lot of them knew they were most likely marching into a death, to their end, or at least that there was a good chance. But they sacrificed. They did it anyway because they wanted us to have liberties. They saw liberties as the ultimate civilizational pillar of good. And it's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget that. And it's easy to get caught up in the minutia of our lives, and especially when inflation is what it is, and everybody's just struggling to get by. It's so easy to kind of lose sight of the fact that we have the ability and we have the rights. We have the right to make change if we can get ourselves to coalesce together. Now, if we keep fighting each other over demographics, over ethnicity, over religion, over race, over any of these silly things that are the animal side of what we are, instead of recognizing that we are all God's children, we all have souls, and again, that there were people that gave everything so that we could start businesses, own guns, defend ourselves, and speak openly about what we believe in. You know, the more we look at the animal side, the more we're going to live in an animal world, which is cold, brutish, and short in Hobbesian terms, versus, you know, something that can be truly beautiful, that the founding fathers, you know, that they foresaw, they had in their mind's eye. Not a utopia, because again, they also understood human nature. They knew that they weren't building a utopia, but they knew that they were building something that would be livable, manageable, and free from as much tyranny as humanly possible. And right now, I mean, that's that's why we're all hurting. That's why everybody's hurting, because of tyranny. And the tyranny continues as long as we keep fighting each other. As long as Democrats don't like Republicans, Republicans don't like Democrats, families are split along party lines, who got a vaccine, who doesn't get the vaccine. As long as we keep up with this other side, as long as we do that, you know. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't speak your mind, but it also doesn't mean you have to hold it against the other person that disagrees with you. And so I think if Americans can get in good habits, drop our bad habits that we've had for about 100 years, over 100 years now, of blaming one another for all our problems, instead of looking to the people in power and saying, hey, why can't you use different language? Why can't you recognize that we're hurting right now, and that when you go back and forth with your fighting, and maybe it's fake fighting, maybe they pretend to not like each other, and all the while behind closed doors they get along great because they're living it up on our dime. I don't know, but as as long as as long as they can play that, as long as they can play us, we're going to have a more animalistic society. That's just how it is. They love to use the animalistic side of human nature to retain power. They know it works. They've known it works for a while. And ever since 1913, they've been able to use the direct election of senators, the Federal Reserve, and the printing of money, which taxes the out of all of us, and income tax, all from 1913. Woodrow Wilson signed them into law. They have been able to really just have their way with the American people and our money, send it to wherever they want, say it's for a good purpose, and always take a little bit off the top for themselves. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. But if we can get in some good habits of not trusting them, which is what the founding fathers didn't want, was just blanket trust. Well, this one's a Republican. I trust him. This one's a Democrat. I trust him. As long as that's the case, we're in trouble. But if we can get in some good habits of asking tough questions, of paying attention, but it's easier said than done, especially, like I said, in an economy where both parents have to go to work just to get by. You can't afford big families anymore. People can't afford children. People can't afford homes. And maybe it's for a reason. Maybe they got us where they want us. I don't know, but Christ says that's not what this is about. That's what any of this is about. And this nation was founded upon believers of Jesus Christ and his teachings. We cannot forget that. Because if we can get in these good habits, trust me, we can get our eye on the ball again. And better days are coming. All right, let me read. You guys need to hear the rest of this book because it's a good book. The flesh will murmur again and again, but will be restrained by fervor of spirit. The old serpent will urge and embitter thee, but will be put to flight by prayer. Moreover, by useful labor, his entrance will be greatly obstructed. Useful labor. Hard work for the right reasons in the right areas of life. And you tell that, you say, Satan, get behind me, or get behind me, Satan, whatever. Chapter 13, of the obedience of one in lowly subjection after the example of Jesus Christ. My son, he who striveth to withdraw himself from obedience withdraweth himself also from grace. And he who seeketh private advantages loseth those which are common unto all. If a man submit not freely and willingly to one set over him, it is a sign that his flesh is not yet perfectly subject to himself, but often resisteth and murmureth. Learn therefore quickly to submit thyself to him who is over thee, if thou seekest to bring thine own flesh into subjection. For the outward enemy is very quickly overcome if the inner man have not been laid low. There is no more grievous and deadly enemy to the soul than thou art to itself. If thou art not led by the Spirit, thou must not altogether conceive contempt for thyself, if thou wilt prevail against flesh and blood. Because as yet thou inordinately lovest thyself, therefore thou shrinkest from yielding thyself to the will of others. But what great thing is it that thou, who art dust and nothingness, yieldest thyself to man for God's sake, when I, the Almighty and the Most High, who created all things out of nothing, subjected myself to man for thy sake. I became the most humble and despised of men, that by my humility thou mightest overcome thy pride. Learn to obey, O dust. Learn to humble thyself, O earth and clay, and to bow thyself beneath the feet of all. Learn to crush thy passions and to yield thyself in all subjection. Be zealous against thyself, nor suffer pride to live within thee, but to show thyself subject and of no reputation, that all may be able to walk over thee and tread thee down as the clay in the streets. What hast thou, O foolish man, of which to complain? O what vile sinner canst thou answer those who speak against thee, seeing thou hast so often offended God, and many a time hast deserved hell. But mine eye hath spared thee. But mine eye hath spared thee, because thy soul was precious in my sight, that thou mightest know my love, and mightest be thankful for my benefits, and that thou mightest give thyself altogether to true subjection and humility, and patiently bear the contempt which thou meritest. Chapter 14. Of the meditation upon the hidden judgments of God, that we may not be lifted up because of our well-doing. Thou sendest forth thy judgments against me, O Lord, and shakest all my bones with fear and trembling, and my soul trembleth exceedingly. I stand astonished and remember that the heavens are not clean in thy sight. If thou chargest thine angels with folly, and didst spare them not, how shall it be unto me? Stars have fallen from heaven, and what shall I dare, who am but dust? They whose works seemed to be praiseworthy fell into the lowest depths, and they who did eat angels' food, them have I seen delighted with the husks that the swine do eat. There is therefore no holiness if thou, O Lord, withdraw thine hand. No wisdom profiteth if thou leave off to guide the helm. No strength availeth if thou cease to preserve. No purity is secure if thou protect it not. No self-keeping availeth if thy holy watching be not there. For when we are left alone, we are swallowed up in the perish. But when we are visited, we are raised up and we live. For indeed, we are unstable, but are made strong through thee. We grow cold, but are rekindled by thee. Oh, how humbly and abjectly must I reckon of myself, how must I weigh it as nothing, if I seem to have nothing good. Oh, how profoundly ought I to submit myself to thy unfathomable judgments, O Lord, when I find myself nothing else save nothing, and again nothing. O weight unmeasurable, O ocean with which cannot be crossed over, where I find nothing of myself save nothing altogether. Where, then, is the hiding place of glory, where the confidence begotten of virtue? All vainglory is swallowed up in the depths of thy judgment against me. What is all flesh in thy sight? For how shall the clay boast against him that fashioned it? How can he be lifted up in vain speech, whose heart is subjected in truth to God? The whole world shall not lift him up whom truth hath subdued, nor shall he be moved by the mouth of all who praise him, who hath placed all his hope in God. For they themselves who speak, behold, they are all nothing, for they shall cease with the sound of their words. But the truth of the Lord endureth forever. Chapter 15. How we must stand and speak in everything that we desire. My son, speak thou thus in every matter. Lord, if it please thee, let this come to pass. Lord, if this shall be for thine honor, let it be done in thy name, Lord. Let it be done in thy name. Lord, if thou see it good for me, and approve it as useful, then grant me to use it for thy honor. But if thou knowest that it shall be hurtful unto me, and not profitable for the health of thy soul, take the desire away from me. For not every desire is from the Holy Ghost, though it appear to a man right and good. It is difficult to judge with certainty whether a good or an evil spirit moved thee to desire this or that, or whether thou art moved by thine own spirit. Many have been deceived at the last, who seemed at the beginning to be moved by a good spirit. Therefore, whatsoever seemeth to thee desirable, thou must always desire and seek after it with the fear of God and humility of heart, and most of all must altogether resign thyself and commit all unto me, and say, Lord, thou knowest what is best. Let this or that be according as thou wilt. Give what thou wilt, so much as best shall please thee, and as shall be most to thine honor. Place me where thou wilt, and freely work thy will with me in all things. I am in thine hand, and turn me in my course. Behold, I am thy servant, ready for all things, for I desire to live not to myself, but to thee. Oh, that I might live worthily and perfectly. A prayer to be enabled to do God's will perfectly. Grant me thy grace, most merciful Jesus, that it may be with me, and work in me, and preserve and persevere with me, even unto the end. Grant that I may ever desire and wish whatsoever is most pleasing and dear unto thee. Let thy will be mine, and let my will always follow thine, and entirely accord with it. May I choose and reject whatsoever thou dost. Yea, let it be impossible for me to choose or reject except according to thy will. Grant that I may die to all worldly things, and for thy sake love to be despised and unknown in this world. Grant unto me above all things that I can desire to rest in thee, and that in thee my heart may be at peace. Thou art the true peace of the heart, thou alone its rest. Apart from thee all things are hard and unquiet. In thee alone, the supreme and eternal God, I will lay me down in peace and take my rest. Amen. Chapter 16. That true solace is to be sought in God alone. Whatsoever I am able to desire or to think of for my solace, I look for it not here, but hereafter. For if I alone had all the solaces of this world, and were able to enjoy all its delights, it is certain that they could not endure long. Wherefore, O my soul, thou canst be fully comforted and perfectly refreshed only in God, the comforter of the poor and the lifter of the humble. Wait but a little while, my soul, wait for the divine promise, and thou shalt have abundance of all good things in heaven. If thou longest too inordinately for the things which are now, thou shalt lose those which are eternal and heavenly. Let temporal things be in the use, eternal things in the desire. Thou canst not be satisfied with any temporal good, for thou was not created for the enjoyment of these. Although thou hast all the good things which ever were created, yet couldst not thou be happy and blessed. All thy blessedness and thy felicity lieth in God who created all things, not such felicity as seemeth good to the foolish lover of the world, but such as Christ's good and faithful servants wait for, and as the spiritual and pure in heart sometimes taste, whose conversation is in heaven. All human solace is empty and short-lived. Blessed and true is that solace which is felt inwardly, springing from truth. The godly man everywhere beareth about with him his own comforter, Jesus, and saith unto him, Be with me, Lord Jesus, always and everywhere. Let it be my comfort to be able to give up cheerfully all human comfort. And if thy consolation fail me, let thy will and righteous approval be always with me for the highest comfort. For thou wilt not always be chiding, neither keepest thou thine anger forever. And where did I say I was going to stop? Let's check real fast. I said, wait, did I not save? I have so much trouble with this app. With Rumble, not this app, with Rumble. I thought I had saved a new. I will go through and I will correct these chapters. I have a feeling they'll still be posted on X incorrectly, but that's fine. That's fine. Now, where was I? Chapter 17. I'm just going to keep going. I got time. Are you enjoying this? I have people watching. That is so exciting for me, especially considering I'm late. Let me get a drink real quick. I'm late and there's still people here. It's awesome. So thank you for watching. It means a lot. The pressure's on now, though. Pressure's on. Chapter 17, that all care is to be cast upon God. I think that's right, yeah. My son, suffer me to do with thee what I will. I know what is expedient for thee. Thou thinkest as a man, in many things thou judgest as human affection persuadeth thee. Lord, what thou sayest is true. This is another back and forth. So that was God speaking. Lord, what thou sayest is true. Greater is thy care for me than all the care which I am able to take for myself. For too insecurely doth he stand who casteth not all his care upon thee. Lord, so long as my will standeth right and firm in thee, do with me what thou wilt, for whatsoever thou shalt do with me cannot be aught but good. Blessed be thou, if thou wilt leave me in darkness. Blessed also be thou, if thou wilt leave me in light. Blessed be thou, if thou vouchsafe to comfort me, and always blessed be thou, if thou cause me to be troubled. So no matter what you're going through, give praise to God that you're going through it, and pray that whatever it is aligned with His will. And I think if you're doing your best and you're walking that fine line, and you know, you're trying to be a good Christian, you're trying to follow these rules and these laws, I think that when you say that prayer, God helps you along the way, right? But then, you know, a lot of people get in a tough spot, and you start thinking, where'd you go, God? But our timelines are not His timelines, and our understanding is not His understanding. Like He told Job, you're a worm. You know. Now we try to create AI that we say, well, this is going to have godlike intelligence. I mean, it's going to know everything, and it might have intelligence beyond anything we can comprehend, but it'll never. Even I got a feeling. I mean, we're talking about the creator of everything that exists. I got a feeling even AI will never. Well, I don't have a feeling. I know AI will never be our God. And there will be people that want it to be. Or they'll say that we need to follow its word or its command because it really is that brilliant. And that's the worry, right? That's the worry with AI is will we start worshiping it because it just gives us such great advice on things. I don't know. My son, even thus thou must stand if thou desirest to walk with me. Thou must be ready alike for suffering or rejoicing. Thou must be poor and needy as willingly as full and rich. And again, Kempis, nowhere in this book, I mean, there's certain points where he kind of hints at it, but I don't know exactly to what degree he means it. But his point is, look, it's not a sin to have wealth. It's not a sin to work hard and make money. In fact, working hard, I think, seems to be a central tenet in this. Working hard, being a part of your community, these things are very important, but wealth is not the end-all be-all. And at the same time, what we see a lot now, as more of these kind of socialist, communist undertones are creeping about, is this notion that that there should be, you should be proud to not be a worker bee, or to not be a part of the economy, and that you didn't sell your soul for business, and so, business is bad, which is nonsense. Jesus was a carpenter. Jesus had a business, as far as I understand. And he's just making the point, look, it doesn't matter what family you were born into, doesn't matter where you're at in your life right now in terms of finances or anything else. Or in Job's day, to be wealthy meant you had a lot of animals and a lot of kids. That was wealth. He's saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're at. The rules apply to everyone. Lord, I will willingly bear for thee whatsoever thou wilt have to come upon me. Without choice I will receive thy hand, good and evil, sweet and bitter, joy and sadness, and will give thee thanks for all things which shall happen unto me. Keep me from all sin, and I will not fear death nor hell. Only cast me not away forever, nor blot me out of the book of life. Then no tribulation shall come upon me. Then no tribulation which shall come upon me shall do me hurt. Chapter 18. That temporal miseries are to be borne patiently after the example of Christ. My son, I came down from heaven for thy salvation. I took upon me thy miseries, not of necessity, but drawn by love, that thou mightest learn patience and mightest bear temporal miseries without murmuring. I am so guilty of this. I murmur. Somebody put a big old dent in my family van, and I murmured. Oh, did I murmur? So again, once you get kind of on the right track, then you can start seeing things a little clearer, and you're like, oh gosh, It starts with the big stuff. You got to knock out the big stuff, or at least to the best of your abilities. You'll quickly find you got more big stuff than you thought. You'll have those things that are sins, that are holding you down, that are displeasing to God. And you knock those out, and suddenly you're like, oh man, there's so much to this. There's so much to this. And again, you're never there. But that's also the part of the blessing. We are animals, and we are meant to go fight a good fight. And we're all looking around going, where's my fight? Well, here it is. It's right here. This is where the fight is. This is the final boss. I am my final boss. Can I get myself in alignment with God's will? Can I do that? That's the fight. That's the battle. So yeah, right there, I read that and I'm like, oh yeah, murmuring. I got to quit murmuring. I got to keep my mouth shut. But not right now. Right now, I got to keep reading. For from the hour of my birth until my death upon the cross, I ceased not from bearing of sorrow. I had much lack of temporal things. I oftentimes heard many reproaches against myself. I gently bore contradictions and hard words. I received ingratitude for benefits, blasphemies for my miracles, rebukes for my doctrine. Yeah. You get on that right track, and you're going to lose friends. And sometimes things that really don't change that much except for within your heart. And then you start looking at the world with new eyes, and suddenly people say things that wouldn't have bothered you before. But once you're a true believer, once you are trying to walk the walk, suddenly things that people say might actually hurt, whereas before it wasn't a big deal. Or you start thinking about how not only things you say, but things people around you say, things that could hurt others, and you're like, oh, I don't want any part of that. That's a slow process, but it's real. Lord, because thou wast patient in thy life, herein most of all fulfilling the commandment of thy Father, it is well that I, miserable sinner, should patiently bear myself according to thy will, and as long as thou wilt have it so, should bear about with me for my salvation the burden of this corruptible life. For although the present life seemeth burdensome, it is nevertheless already made very full of merit through thy grace. And to those who are weak it becometh easier and brighter through thy example in the footsteps of thy saints. But it is also much more full of consolation than it was of old, under the Old Testament, when the gate of heaven remained shut, and even the way to heaven seemed more obscure when so few cared to seek after the heavenly kingdom. But not even those who were then just and in the way of salvation were able, before thy passion and the ransom of thy holy death, to enter the kingdom of heaven. Oh, what great thanks am I bound to give thee, who hast vouchsafed to show me and all faithful people the good and the right way to thine eternal kingdom. For thy way is our way, and by holy patience we walk to thee who art our crown. If thou hadst not gone before and taught us, who would care to follow? Oh, how far would they have gone backward if they had not beheld thy glorious example? Behold, we are still lukewarm, though we have heard of thy many signs and discourses. What would become of us if we had not such a light to help us follow thee? Yeah. You ever wonder, why am I here right now? Wherever you are, whoever you are listening. You ever just sit and you think, why am I here right now? Or why am I so blessed to even know these worlds? Hominids, some form of human has been around for 1,000,000 years, for 1,000,000 years. We're about to celebrate the 250th birthday of the United States. 200 years, that's what, a tenth? That's a tenth of 2,000 years, right? I can do math. Jesus just showed up. And isn't it interesting that he showed up right as the game got really interesting? You know, the middle of the Roman, not the middle of the Roman Empire, but during the Roman Empire, just as humans were starting to figure some things out, at least in our modern, I don't know, I've been reading and watching these videos about, where did the pyramids come from? How old are they? So at least in our modern times, and by modern I mean the past 10,000 years, he's pretty recent. We're closer to Jesus than Jesus was to Moses in terms of years, right? I think that's right. Why are we so lucky? Why are we so blessed? And now we get to talk about it through wires. And then I can talk about it and people can hear me all over the world. That's something. That's really something. And that's what Kempis is saying here is, how did I get in 1417? How did I get to be so lucky? Now, if you look at God sending himself through the Virgin Mary, if you look at that, sending himself on a death sentence, sending himself on a, I don't want to say suicide mission, but, he knows all. He knew what would happen. And that's what we call it, the passion. His love for us. He loved us that much. We're worms. We're worms. Would you become a worm for a worm lifetime, knowing that all the other worms would say, "Oh, this one's weird. Let's get rid of him," in like the most violent fashion ever. Let's get rid of this worm. You wouldn't do it. Why are we so lucky that we get to know the story, that we get to share the story, that we get to be a part of the story? Why are we so blessed? I don't know. I have no idea. But we are. What would become of us if we had not such a light to help us follow thee? When I was a kid, I used to daydream and think, man, I wish that I didn't know right from wrong. Then I could do wrong and not have to feel bad about it. I would literally think that as a little kid. Like, it's got to be easier for these people that don't even know, But it's not. It's not. And I'm finally at a point in my life where I've cleaned up enough of my act where I can look back and go, oh man, you run to these vices, you run to these things that in today's modern society, everybody tells you, well, that's not a big deal. You're just human. Yeah, you gotta take the load off somehow, that kind of thing. And you don't know what happiness is. Happiness is peace. Peace of mind, peace of body, to have your body where it was meant to be. Your body is a temple. And when you're not living in it, you don't know. When I was a kid and I was thinking to myself, I wish I didn't know right from wrong, because then I could just do what I wanted. I would see kids do things and I would be like, I wish I could do that. I wish I had that carefree ability. Now, as I got older, I embraced it. I embraced sin. I embraced all the bad stuff. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And the next thing you know, I'm crazy. I'm told I'm bipolar. That I'd be on medication for the rest of my life. Medication that made sin that much easier. It like blocked the part of my brain that says, hey, this is not natural. This is not normal. You shouldn't be doing this. Blocked it. I didn't care. I think SSRIs, by the way, a quick aside, I think SSRIs are the most dangerous substance known to man. I really do. I truly do. But I wasn't on just that. I was on other stuff just to calm my brain down. Why? I don't know. Because I was living in sin, partly because I wasn't eating things correctly, and I wasn't deworming, which that's, talk about unclean. Talk about, being clean versus unclean. And then you look at the Old Testament and they're like, don't eat pork. And we laugh about it now, but there's a reason. Parasites are very real, and they're a real problem in America. I am digressing like a digressor. Like I'm getting paid to digress. I will quit digressing and let's get right back to it. We're at chapter 14, and we're at chapter 19. I can do math. Roman numerals, or I can handle Roman numerals. Chapter 19 and then we'll stop, and I'll start chapter 20 tomorrow at 10 a.m. I don't want to say you have my word, because something might come up, and I start at like 10:10 or something like that. All right, chapter 19. Now that y'all are worried about parasites, all 4 of you that are watching me, or however many. Maybe I should call this podcast I Digress. Digressing with Dave. Digressing with Dave. I like that. Of bearing injuries, and who shall be approved as truly patient? What sayest thou, my son? Cease to complain. Consider my suffering and that of my saints. Thou hast not yet resisted unto blood. It is little which thou sufferest in comparison with those who have suffered so many things, have been so strongly tempted, so grievously troubled, so many wise proved and tried. Thou oughtest therefore to call to mind the more grievous sufferings of others than thou mightest bear thy lesser ones more easily. And if they seem not to thee little, and if they seem not to thee little, see that it is not thy impatience which is the cause of this. But whether they be little or whether they be great, study to bear them with patience. So far as thou settest thyself to bear patiently, so far thou dost wisely and art deserving of the more merit. Thou shalt also bear the more easily if thy mind and habit are carefully trained hereunto. And say not, I cannot bear these things from such a man. Nor are things of this kind to be borne by me. For he hath done me grievous harm, and imputeth to me what I have never thought. But from another I will suffer patiently, and such things as I see I ought to suffer. Foolish is such a thought as this, for it considereth not the virtue of patience, nor by whom the virtue is to be crowned, but it rather weigheth persons and offenses against self. He is not truly patient who will only suffer as far as seemeth right to himself, and from whom he pleaseth. But the truly patient man considereth not by what man he is tried, whether by one above him, or by an equal or inferior, whether by a good and holy man, or a perverse and unworthy man, but indifferently from every creature whatsoever, or how often soever adversity happeneth to him, he gratefully accepteth all from the hand of God, and counteth it great gain. For with God nothing which is born for his sake, however small, shall lose its reward. Be thou therefore ready for the fight, if thou wilt have the victory. Without striving thou canst not win the crown of patience. If thou wilt not suffer, thou refusest to be crowned. But if thou desirest to be crowned, strive manually, endure patiently. Without labor thou drawest not near to rest, nor without fighting comest thou to victory. Make possible to me, O Lord, by grace, what seemeth impossible to me by nature. Thou knowest how little I am able to bear, and how quickly I am cast down when a like adversity riseth up against me. Whatsoever trial of tribulation may come to me, may it become unto me pleasing and acceptable. For to suffer and be vexed by thy sake is exceeding healthful to the soul. And that was chapter 19. Tomorrow we will get on to chapter 20. Yeah. Hey, America's going through this right now, right? For a lot of us. Supposedly the wealth gap is just widening, and people are either, riding that AI wave and making the ducats like nobody's business, or you're just trying to make ends meet, and you're lucky if you do it. And this is dangerous because this leads to socialism. Talk about patterns, this leads to socialism. Under socialism, under communism, they're not a fan of this. Communists outright ban books like this. And so we're hurting in America right now, and we know that the enemy is, if he's not at the gates, he's got to be seeing an opportunity, right? How do you fight? Kempis says you got to fight. You got to fight the good fight. How do you do it? And I think the answers can be found in this book, The Imitation of Christ. We can fight the good fight with humility and honesty. And I think if we do that, and we can get through these tribulations together, and remember that we were founded as a Christian nation, and that Christ loves this country. He loves this country enough to make sure we got the atom bomb first. If you can keep that in mind, I think we're going to get through this. But it's going to take a lot of grace. It's going to take God's hand. We're going to need it. We need God to step in, and we need to be praying, and we need to lose our sense of, we are all superior. And on a personal level, we absolutely need to quit worrying about who is superior to anyone else here in America. We need to see ourselves all as Americans. We need to see each other as brothers and sisters, no matter our nationality, our religion, any of it. We need to be humble in God's eyes, as humble as we possibly can be, and then we'll get through it. And America will come out stronger. We can have what's that called? I guess a revolution of the soul. We can a resurgence of belief. We need it. Because if we lose, if the believers lose, we're going to get more of what we've got, and what we're being fed right now is socialism. And it will lead to a society where you're not allowed to read books like this aloud. It really will. It happens over and over again. There's a cycle to this. And if we can get through it, and we can have, we can revitalize the American spirit, a spirit that is born out of the love of Christ, out of sacrifice, honor. Nobody talks about honor anymore. We talk more about who has what amount of money than we do honor. We talk about looks maxing. We don't talk about faith maxing, honor maxing, honesty maxing. And if we can get back to that, we're gonna have a great future for our children and our grandchildren set up. But it's gonna take sacrifice. It's gonna take the alignment of our will to God's. And we need to talk to God every day and ask Him to keep His eye on our nation and on our politicians and on ourselves. And yeah, that's right. I think that's true. I think everything I said was true today. I think. I appreciate you guys very much for watching. It means everything to me that I've got anybody watching at all. It really does. And I will see you tomorrow. 10 a.m.-ish. Should be right around 10 a.m. though. Thank you again. Have a wonderful Monday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.